In the course of the past few months, I was introduced to the wonderful world of tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs for short, or tabletop RPGs, or TT role-playing game. Oh, no, you may not know them by that name in particular, so the most mainstream example of this is Dungeons and Dragons. You know, the thing that has elves, dwarves, goblins, and other things that are often associated with really nerdy stuff. Heck, it was even in an episode of The Big Bang Theory. That is how you know it's mainstream nerdy.
Before you is a giant oak tree with a face on it that looks a lot like Nicolas Cage.
You said Nicolas Cage. I played a couple of sessions, made a few characters, bought the movie, it's really fun by the way, and bought an ungodly amount of dice. And after all this, it kind of clicked in my mind that Pokémon would really fit as a tabletop RPG. More specifically, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon. That's right, I've now made a trilogy of Mystery Dungeon videos. We've done it! I should mention that multiple Pokémon D&D series have already been made, so this really isn't a unique idea. However, the execution has always been different in my head. But there are definitely reasons which make Pokémon and, by extension, Mystery Dungeon a really good setting for a tabletop RPG. Firstly, in Dungeons & Dragons, some enemy types or playable races have built-in immunities, resistances and vulnerabilities. These should sound familiar because these, fundamentally, work in the same way that Pokémon types work, which saves a lot of work in terms of which ones counteract which. Pokémon has already done all the dirty work there, and there's already existing calculators for type matchups.
Both of Ash's Pokémon are water types and they're totally weak against fire type.
Next is move interpretation. Now, this is something that I personally enjoy and want to implement whenever I play Dungeons & Dragons, and it's how you flavour the way you conjure your spells and attacks.
I don't know if this makes any amount of difference, but for the duration of this spell, I have a 30-foot radius sunlight glowing in my hand.
And in a way, Pokemon kinda already did this when you compare it between the anime and the games. My favourite example of this is Pin Missile. In the game, it looks honestly quite lackluster with just some triangle shapes being thrown at the opponent. In the anime, however, they're literally heat-seeking missiles that pulverize the opponent. Even in the anime, some moves are shown differently. For example, the first time I saw Water Pulse being used was by Ash's Weasel, and it's shown being produced kinda like a Kamehameha wave. Other instances in the anime show Pokemon producing it without arms by using either their mouth or by a different method. And in a tabletop RPG, you can have the freedom, well, as long as it makes sense that is, and isn't too ridiculous, to come up with a description of how your moves are used. Now, let's talk about feats. Not that. In Dungeons & Dragons, feats are essentially unlockable abilities your characters can gain once hitting a certain level, as well as any additional requirements which make sense for that feat. Here's a whole list of them, and trust me, there is a whole lot of them. But here's one simple example to kind of tell you what a feat kind of does. Spell Sniper. You've learned techniques to enhance your attacks with certain kinds of spells, and gain the following benefit. When you cast a spell that requires you to roll an attack roll, the spell's range is doubled. The ranged spell attacks also ignore half cover and 3/4 cover. In Mystery Dungeon, they also have feats, but it is much more simplified, and there's also a whole list of them as well. Just like what we did before, I'll read out an example from the list. Counter Hitter sometimes counters a quarter of the damage received back to the adjacent Pokemon. The only difference is that Pokemon are grouped into learning specific feats, so you can't really pick and choose which ones you want. Thankfully though, in tabletop RPGs, the person running the game can adjust the rules to bypass restrictions like this. Finally, the last reason is immersion. If you know me, one of my top games of all time is Fallout New Vegas. Almost every video praising New Vegas will mention the multiple different dialogue options available that doesn't rely only on speech, and the different choices you can make to finish a quest. However, Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop RPGs in general can go a step further, simply because they're not restricted by any coding limitations of a game. Again, in New Vegas, you may be able to open a door by lockpicking, or hacking a terminal linked to it, or even finding a key somewhere by sneaking and stealing it. Or, just killing them and taking it. But there's hardly an option to use your massive laser rifle to blast open the doorknob or the door itself and simply walk through it. Tabletop RPGs allow you to come up with some of the most ridiculous ideas and run with it. It may not work, but you can certainly try. In fact, it's because of this you can't think of unconventional ways to solve a problem. Now, one particular scene in Mystery Dungeon is the driving force of why I want to do this. In this cutscene, you, your partner, and a Groval are on a stockade about to be executed by some Sableye. It's a long story. Then, the game does a classic and gives you multiple options, which aren't actually options as only one of them progresses the story, but that's not what's important. It's what happens next. As the Sableye accidentally cuts us down, freeing us, Groval uses a luminous orb, which in-game is used to light up the dungeon and allows you to see the entire map layout. But, in this cutscene, it's used as a flashbang to daze the Sableye. Once the screen clears, all three of you are not on screen. This causes all hostile Pokemon to clear the area and search for you. But it's revealed that Groval also used Dig, but not as an attack. No, it was to hide all of you. This is a genuinely great solution to our problem, as it uses an item and a move, but not for their intended uses. Instead, the main priority was surviving, and rather than taking a fight while being outnumbered, which, to be fair, I believe we could have won, we did have a discharge, for goodness sake. We decided to hide and then flee. And that's about it. This is my argument as to why Pokemon Mystery Dungeon would work as a tabletop RPG. Currently, I'm trying to make a working model for a Mystery Dungeon tabletop RPG game, where it has a lot more focus on you being a Pokemon and using actual Pokemon moves. I've already written a fair amount of content, such as new technical machine variants, how moves are categorized in terms of their damage. Right now, I'm working on how to implement status effects into the game, as well as trying, and emphasis on trying, to make a character sheet template for this. But I am completely useless on Canva. If you'd like to discuss anything, please leave any thoughts in the comments down below. Whether it's questions about if I'd included anything in particular, any suggestions or general thoughts, I would be more than happy to read them and reply to them if I need to. I was going to be playing and recording Baldur's Gate 3 to see how it uses some mechanics, trying to translate D&D into actual game mechanics, until I realised my computer isn't good enough to run it. Alright, how bad is it? Can't be that bad, right? Oh my god. 46%. The weakest link in your system is your graphics card. So, in the meantime, I'll be playing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic instead, and most likely we'll be streaming it on Twitch, because the game is honestly massive, and I keep getting sidetracked doing other stuff, so it's probably better to do it as, streaming sessions. So yeah, hopefully, in the meantime, KOTOR would be a good experience while I save up some, money to actually buy a better computer to run and play Baldur's Gate 3. And trust me, I really, really want to play the game blind. And I've been dodging spoilers left and right, and even big gameplay videos this entire time. The only clip that I remember seeing is the squirrel kick.
This squirrel might be the single most adorable creature you can recall in all your stunted memory.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like and follow my Twitch for more content. Oh yeah, and subscribe for my YouTube for more content. In fact, just do anything, please. Please stay around.